Hey guys, I am so super pumped up to start chapter one with you. So, the very first thing that you're going to want to put into your notebook is kind of that title page. So, you're going to go ahead and put chapter one equations, let it fill up the first page of your notes. That way, you can just really kind of sink in and be able to find those different markers and different things. So, through this chapter, we're going to be focusing on two-step equations, multi-step equations, variable on both sides, rearranging equations to solve for the variable, absolute value, compound. It's going to be a ton of stuff. All right, so we're going to start off with two-step equations and multi-step equations and kind of see where we go from there and what else we need to focus in on. All right, so let's dive in, shall we? All right, so here is going to be our header for what we're going to be doing. So we have solving two-step and multi-step equations. All right, and I'm going to swap this out for a blank sheet of paper just to make it a little bit easier. So whatever I write, you are going to want to write in this entire process to make sure that everything you're doing is right there working. All right, so with solving, keep in mind, anytime I write, you can feel free to pause if I don't give you enough time with what we're doing. All right, so with this, the biggest thing that you need to remember is we're balancing equations. And balancing equation means that we need to keep both sides equal, hence the equal sign in an equation. All right, so with solving, that means there's an unknown. So we're trying to figure out, okay, what does that unknown weight have to be to keep that teeter-totter balanced and equal and fun to ride? We don't want one side weighing too much. That's why you always hear the phrase, what you do to one side, you do to the other. So that way we're keeping it all balanced. All right, so when we're solving equations, we need to do the opposite operation in order to solve this. So one of the first things I want to do is I like to call it kind of a marriage chart. All right, so I want to kind of take a look at how we can marry these two things together. All right, so you're going to go ahead and you're going to write that we are going to have an equations marriage chart. All right, and we're going to kind of take a look at specifically what signs go with what. So a lot of times we focus in on addition. And we know that addition, the opposite of addition, is subtraction. And we need to keep in mind that this travels both directions. So we have addition is married to subtraction, subtraction is married to addition. To cancel out positive, we do negative. To cancel out negative, we do positive. All right, the next one would be multiplication. Now, typically in 8th grade land, we're using parentheses or we're using the little asterisks. We don't really use the X because that looks like a variable, but for our chart, we'll include it in there. So our multiplication is tied to division, and our division is then tied to multiplication. All right, and those ones are pretty straightforward. You guys are used to kind of mirroring those two together. All right, there's a couple more that I do want to include in this because we're going to be seeing them a little bit later. And you can kind of take note on your calculator the opposites. The first one is when I have something that is squared. That is that little 2, so that is called squared. Well, on our calculator, you'll see that there is an opposite function, and that is called the square root. So the opposite of squared is square root. The opposite of square root is squared. And then the other one that you're going to be seeing is cubed. And the opposite of that is the cubed root, and it's the radical symbol with a little 3 sitting on top of it. And I'm going to put a letter in there just to kind of show you how it is. And me, I like to box things off. So that way if I need to reference them, I'm going to be able to find it quite easily. All right, so here is our equation marriage chart. So again, when I want to cancel positive, I do negative. When I want to cancel out divide, I do multiply, and so on. All right, so now that we have kind of this concept of everything that's going on, let's actually start solving. Okay. And again, if at any point you need to pause the video for more time, please make sure you're doing so. So here we have two-step equations, So this implies right off the bat, we're going to be doing two steps in order to solve. Okay, so 2 steps in order to solve. So we have this little blurb here. In two-step equations, you're undoing the operations in the reverse order of what's being done. Okay. I like to kind of use the example of your socks and shoes. So if we pretend that your foot is the variable, okay, and I actually have a pair of gym shoes on right now, okay, my foot is the variable, all right? What I had to do to get on my shoes, socks and shoes, is I put my sock on first, then I put on my gym shoe and I tied it, okay? Now if I want to get to my foot, yeah, he's still there. If I want to get to the foot, I can't rip my sock off. And if I did, I'd be having a hole and then I'd get yelled at and all of that stuff. I have to remove the shoe first before I can get to the sock, before I can get to my foot. That's kind of how two-step equations are. I know it's a really weird analogy, but we need to undo it from the outside in. Okay, so let's take a look at what that means. So we're going to take a look at this first example here. All right, we have 10 equals 6 minus 2x. So when I'm talking about the reverse stuff, so if I said that x is the foot, it's my variable. The first thing that's happening to x is it's getting multiplied by -2. Then that's getting added to 6. All right, so when we undo this, we actually have to get rid of what's furthest from the variable first, what's not touching it. Then we get rid of what's touching it because it's kind of easier. We're undoing what's further away than what's doing. All right, now some of you guys in 7th grade may have kind of learned that strategy of putting a fence, all right, because that equal sign is where our teeter-totter lives. So if that helps you out and it keeps things where you need to, please feel free. I kind of stay away from it, but I've also been solving equations a lot longer than you guys have. All right, so again, we're doing this in reverse order. All right, so I'm trying to get rid of what's not touching it first. I see here that this is a +6. Understand that negative belongs to the 2. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do opposite of this +6. And the opposite of +6, remember, positive, the opposite is negative. So I need to subtract 6 from both sides. Now remember, when we say both sides, we're working both sides of the equal sign. So what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Whenever we use addition and subtraction, we're always going to put that equal sign bar going all the way across. And now we're solving the vertical equations. 10 minus 6, well, that's 4. I bring down my equal sign. 6 minus 6, well, those cancel. That's my favorite thing to do, is cross things out. And I'm going to bring down the -2. The most common mistake is that we don't bring the negative down. So please keep that in mind. All right, so now we have to separate this. Please remember, when they are touching, that means to multiply. So we go back to our chart. The opposite of multiply is to divide. And in 8th grade, or freshman if you consider yourself that, our division is a fraction bar. And I'm going to put -2 because, in fact, I need to make sure those negatives cancel. What I do to one side, I do to the other. On this right-hand side, those will cancel because that equals the number 1. -2 divided by -2 is the number 1, so 1x. And then 4 divided by 2, well, that's 2. And then positive and negative results in negative. So we get the response of x is -2. Now I can check this answer simply by plugging in my work. So we have our original of 10 equals 6 minus 2. And now I'm going to plug in for x my -2. 10 equals 6 plus 4, because -2 times -2 is +4. And 10 equals 10. Well, it sure does. That has to be my answer. Okay. So again, you're reversing it. So again, you're getting rid of what's not touching first. Then you're getting rid of, I can talk, what is touching. All right, so let's go ahead on to our next problem. So we have -4 plus 7x equals 3. All right, so again, we analyze our situation. If you need to go ahead and draw your fence going down your equal sign, please feel free if that helps you out with what you're doing. All right, so step 1, we kind of analyze it. We see that the 7 is touching, so he's going to be last to go. So this -4 is what needs to go first. The opposite of negative is positive. So we're going to add 4 to both sides. And again, both sides meaning the opposite side of our equal sign. These cancel to make 0, leaving us 7x equals 7. All right, what's visually showing here is multiplication, again, when they're touching. All right, so we're going to divide both sides by 7. 7 divided by 7 makes 1x, and that equals the number 1. Again, we can then check our work. -4 plus 7 times 1 equals 3. -4 plus 7 equals 3. 3 does in fact equal 3. Check. That is my answer. Right? So now looking at these two examples, I have 2 problems for you to try. All right, you're going to go ahead and you're going to pause the video to complete these. All right, and when you are ready to see the answers, you go and pause. Okay, so go ahead and pause that video. All right, so hopefully you've paused it and you're now ready to see these answers. So I'm going to work through them just real quick so you can kind of see how these would power through. So the first thing I would do is I would be subtracting a half from both sides. All right, so 1/2 equals 2x. Here I'm going to divide by 2, and I'm going to write divided by 2 here for a moment. All right, so when we divide by fractions, we're really multiplying by the reciprocal. All right, so that would have been x equals 1/4. Okay, and plugging that in, 2 times 1/4 is 1/2, and 1/2 and 1/2 makes 1. So you should have had x equals 1/4. All right, solving it here, we are going to subtract 11 from both sides. So we have 0.6g equals -6. All right, and of course I need to get my handy dandy calculator out because I was not ready for decimals just then. So we're going to divide by 0.6 on both sides. So g equals -6 divided by, my negative sign didn't go there. So 6, that's negative, divided by 0.6 would give us -10. All right, so hopefully you guys got both of those answers correct. All right, so I'm going to end this video here to kind of give you a breather break and so you can analyze how well you did. In the next video, we're going to continue these same notes, so don't lose your spot, on multi-step equations. So if you need a breather, take a breather. If not, go ahead and play that next video on multi-step equations to help you solve.